What if a single push could change everything? What if the hallways you've walked 1,000 times suddenly became a battlefield? This is the story of Nia, bullied, underestimated, and pushed to her breaking point. But when the shove comes, her response doesn't just fight back. It dismantles the entire system of fear around her. What happens next isn't just a story about a hallway fight. It's a story about courage, prejudice, and the power of refusing to be silenced. By the end of this video, you'll realize standing tall isn't just brave, it's revolutionary. The hallway was buzzing with noise, lockers slamming, kids laughing, but for Nia, it felt like she was moving through a storm. She had seen it coming, that flash of a cruel smile, the push that was about to hit her. But nothing could have prepared her for what actually happened. Haley was bigger, louder, untouchable, or so everyone thought. She thrived on control, on fear, and today Nia was the target. One wrong look, one small step in the wrong place, and Haley would make sure the entire school felt her power. And then it happened. A shove from behind, sudden, sharp, the world tilting around Nia. Books scattered, papers flying like desperate little birds escaping a cage. Laughter echoed, and whispers followed her as she scrambled to her feet. Every eye was on her. Every heartbeat felt loud enough to hear, but Nia didn't freeze. She didn't cry out. Somewhere deep inside a spark ignited, the same spark that had whispered to her countless times, telling her she was stronger than anyone's opinion, anyone's fists, anyone's cruelty. Today that spark became a fire. From the corner, Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Are you okay?" But Nia barely registered it. All she could feel was that moment, charged, raw, alive. And in that moment she knew she had a choice. She could walk away like everyone expected. Or she could do something no one saw coming. Haley, smug and confident, thought she had already won. The smirk on her face said it all. She ruled this hallway, this school, maybe even Nia's life for the next few weeks. But she had no idea. No idea that Nia had been waiting, planning, watching. The gears in Nia's mind were spinning faster than Haley could ever imagine. The tension was suffocating, the air thick with anticipation. Every step, every glance, every whisper could change everything. Nia's hands were shaking, not with fear, but with the thrill of the storm she was about to unleash. She knew that whatever she did next would either shatter the rules Haley had lived by, or put Nia herself at risk in ways she hadn't yet imagined. And then, the moment arrived. The one choice, one action, one bold move that would turn the tables completely. But what would it be? How could a single act of courage change the entire power structure of a school hallway? If you think this is just another story about a school bully, think again. Nia's response wasn't just a reaction. It was a lesson, a revolution, a moment that would leave everyone in shock. And the question is, did she have the courage to do what no one else could? The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Lincoln High, painting the hallways in a warm, golden hue. Students rushed past lockers, laughter and chatter bouncing off the walls, but for Nia, it felt like she was moving through a quiet bubble. Adjusting her backpack straps, she took a deep breath and tried to shake off the lingering nerves that always accompanied the start of a new day. To anyone else, Nia looked like a typical high school junior, bright eyes, a confident smile, and a quiet determination that often went unnoticed. But those who took the time to look closer could see the spark in her, the kind that made her quietly exceptional. She wasn't just smart. She was observant, aware, and unusually resilient for her age. Mornings were her favorite time at school. She met Ethan at their usual spot near the lockers. Ethan, always easygoing and protective, greeted her with a wide grin. "You survived another math test, huh?" he teased, nudging her shoulder lightly. They shared a quick laugh, the kind that made the chaos of the hallways feel a little more bearable. For Nia, these moments, small, fleeting, ordinary, were a reminder that life could be simple, that school could be something more than just grades and rumors. Nia thrived in the classrooms, in solving problems that others would give up on, in proving quietly, yet relentlessly, that she belonged. Her family reinforced this belief. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Never let anyone dim your light. Nia, your worth isn't defined by anyone else." Her little brother looked up to her with unspoken admiration. and she carried that responsibility like a shield. But even in these ordinary routines, Nia sensed the undercurrents of a world that wasn't always fair. There were whispers in the hallways, glances that lingered a little too long, subtle hints that some students didn't fully accept her. At first she ignored them, writing them off as misunderstandings or coincidence. But the truth was unavoidable. People noticed the color of her skin before they noticed her name. Haley. The popular girl with a knack for intimidation had never been openly cruel to Nia. Yet there was an unmistakable tension whenever their paths crossed. A smirk here, a sharp comment there, a casual glance meant to remind Nia that she didn't quite fit in. Nia felt it in the pit of her stomach, that sense that something was building, even if she couldn't see it yet. Ethan had noticed it too. "Ignore it for now," he would say with a concerned half-smile, but the worry in his eyes betrayed his words. There was something in the air, unspoken and unsettling. It was subtle, the way injustice often is before it hits in full force. A push here, a whisper there, a smile that hides malice. And yet, Nia had learned to navigate it. She noticed, she planned, she remembered faces, patterns, moments where power was wielded unfairly. But even with all her awareness, nothing could fully prepare her for the storm that was approaching. One day, the quiet, ordinary hallways she knew so well would erupt into chaos, and she would be at the center of it. For now, though, life was simple. Nia walked through the hallways with her head held high, books clutched to her chest, and Ethan by her side. The world outside the classroom was unpredictable, yes, but inside, there was laughter, friendship, and a small sense of safety. This was her normal, her anchor, and soon, she would need every ounce of courage she had to protect it. Even as she navigated the familiar rhythm of lockers, chatter, and hurried footsteps. The tension lingered like a shadow at the edge of the sunlight. Something was coming, something that would challenge Nia's patience, her strength, and her sense of justice. And when it arrived, it would demand more than a quick reaction. It would demand courage, cunning, and the boldest move of her life. The first incident seemed small, almost insignificant. But for Nia, it was a sharp reminder that the hallways she once felt safe in were no longer hers. It started in the cafeteria. She had found a quiet corner, her tray balanced carefully, when Haley and her clique slid into the booth across from her. The laughter was loud, deliberate, cutting through the chatter of the room. Nia tried to ignore them, focusing on Ethan's calm presence beside her. But the whispers grew louder, and soon it was clear they were talking about her. "Look at her trying to act like she belongs," Haley said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Her friends laughed, a cruel, echoing sound. Nia's cheeks burned, but she stayed silent, gripping her fork tightly, forcing herself to stay composed. It wasn't just words. Over the following days, subtle harassment escalated. Lockers were slammed as she walked by. Notes with cruel messages appeared in her bag. Even in class, Haley would lean close to her friends and whisper comments that stung, loud enough for Nia to catch the words. Every insult, every snicker, was designed to remind her. She was different. She didn't belong. Then came the group projects. Teachers, unaware of the undercurrents in the classroom, assigned partners randomly. Nia ended up with Haley, who made sure to control every aspect, dismissing Nia's ideas, mocking her suggestions, and leaving her little room to contribute. When Nia tried to speak up, her voice was ignored. Every attempt to assert herself was met with laughter or eye rolls. Outside school, the tension followed her. Social media posts, vague yet cutting, highlighted Nia's successes in a mocking tone. Photos of her achievements, academic awards, community projects, were shared with captions that minimized or ridiculed her. The digital world mirrored the real one, a constant reminder that even in spaces she thought she controlled, prejudice waited patiently. Despite the constant attacks, Nia refused to crumble. She confided in Ethan during lunch breaks, her voice low but firm. "I won't let them get to me," she said, though the tremor in her hands betrayed the weight of the attacks. Ethan's support was steady, a small anchor in the storm, yet even he couldn't shield her from the humiliation that seemed to multiply every day. Then came the public moments. A science presentation in front of the entire school became another battlefield. Nia had spent weeks preparing a project that showcased not just her knowledge but her creativity. Haley, noticing the attention Nia might receive, made sure to undermine her at every turn. During the presentation, Haley whispered false facts, challenged Nia aggressively, and drew laughter from the audience. Some teachers tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Nia felt the sting of every laugh, every glance, and every side-eye. Her heart raced, a mixture of anger and shame, and yet she refused to retreat. The tension at school escalated further when group events became arenas for public humiliation. One day, in gym class, Nia was deliberately excluded from team selection. Whispers circulated, comments were made, and every subtle act of rejection reminded her that she was being systematically pushed out. The injustice wasn't always visible to the adults, but the students knew. Every door slammed in her face, every joke at her expense, tightened the invisible chains around her daily life. Even small victories felt tainted. When Nia finally earned recognition for her art project, Haley immediately posted a mocking comment online, dragging Nia's achievement through ridicule. Friends who tried to defend her faced backlash, and Nia felt isolated despite her resilience. The combination of systemic bias, peer cruelty, and public humiliation created a pressure cooker that seemed impossible to escape. And yet, Nia's determination grew stronger with each incident. She learned to anticipate Haley's moves, to read the room, to protect herself emotionally while observing patterns of cruelty. Each setback sharpened her mind, each insult fueled her resolve. The quiet moments she shared with Ethan became strategic planning sessions. Together, they plotted ways for Nia to reclaim the space she had every right to occupy. But the climax of these tensions was always looming, the shove in the hallway, the confrontation that would ignite the turning point. The moment when all the humiliation and injustice collided into a single explosive act. Nia felt it in the pit of her stomach, a mix of fear and anticipation. Something was coming, and she knew that when it did, she couldn't afford hesitation. The whole school's power dynamics were about to shift, and it all depended on one bold, calculated move. The days blurred together, each one a build-up to the inevitable confrontation. Every insult, every whisper, every look became part of the storm gathering around her. The rising tension wasn't just in the hallways, it was in the air, in every glance, every comment. Every seemingly small act of cruelty that reminded Nia she was different. And just as the school year seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, the moment arrived. A shove, a snap, the chaos. But Nia was ready, even if no one else knew it yet. The hallway was unusually quiet that afternoon. Even the usual hum of chatter and locker slams seemed to hold its breath, as if the building itself sensed the storm about to erupt. Nia's steps echoed on the polished floor, backpack heavy on her shoulders, heart thundering in rhythm with each beat of fear and anticipation. She had felt it coming all week, Haley's smirk, the whispers, the sharp glances, the carefully orchestrated small humiliations. And now she was alone in the hallway, books clutched tightly, her stomach nodding with every step. This wasn't just a shove or a comment. This was the culmination of months of harassment, of public ridicule, of being told, without words, that she didn't belong. Haley appeared at the end of the hall, leaning against the lockers with that signature confident stance. Her friends lingered behind, a wall of laughter and expectation. "Well, well, look who's walking like she owns the place," Haley called out, her voice dripping with mockery. The sound bounced off the lockers, sharp and deliberate. Nia's hands trembled, not with fear, but with the energy of controlled fury. Every insult, every whispered humiliation, every subtle act of injustice had led to this single, charged moment. And now she had a choice, retreat or fight back. Haley pushed, sudden and violent, sending Nia stumbling forward. Books slipped from her grasp, scattering like paper birds caught in a windstorm. The hallway erupted in gasps and whispers as students froze, some too shocked to intervene. Ethan's voice shouted from the other end of the hall, "Nia!" But she didn't falter. Instead of retreating, Nia paused. She straightened, her shoulders squared, her gaze locking on Haley. The world seemed to shrink around them, leaving only two figures in a charged, tense arena. Nia's mind raced, cataloging every insult, every slight, every public humiliation that had led to this moment. And in that split second, a plan crystallized. "You think you can push me around?" Nia's voice rang out, clear, strong, unyielding. Every word was a weapon. The hallway went silent, and even Haley faltered slightly, surprised by the force behind it. Nia stepped forward, not trembling, not cowering, but moving with purpose. Haley laughed nervously, masking her uncertainty. "Oh, come on. You think standing there like that changes anything?" she sneered. "Yes," Nia said, her voice steady and unwavering. "It changes everything, not just for me, but for anyone you've tried to make feel small. Your words, your pushes, your laughter, they don't define me. They never did." The students watching were frozen, some whispering to each other, others holding their phones, recording. Nia's courage was magnetic. It drew attention, forced recognition. Every person in the hallway felt it. The raw power of someone refusing to be crushed, refusing to be erased. Then came the moment that Haley couldn't anticipate. Nia bent down calmly, collected her scattered books with deliberate precision, and returned them to her backpack, not flustered, not shaken, but composed. Then she took a step forward, closing the distance between herself and Haley. The look in her eyes was unwavering, a mixture of fire and calm calculation. "You've made a lot of people feel like they don't belong," Nia said, her tone measured, each word landing like a punch. "But not me." "Not anymore," Haley's smirk faltered, her friends exchanging uneasy glances. The power that had seemed untouchable moments ago was cracking under the weight of Nia's courage. For the first time, the students saw Haley not as the untouchable queen of the hallway, but as someone human, vulnerable, exposed. Nia didn't shout. She didn't lash out physically. She didn't beg or plead. She simply stood tall, her voice carrying over the whispers, her presence commanding attention. Every insult, every shove, every subtle act of discrimination that had been hurled at her now recoiled in the hallway. Reflected back on the perpetrator, Ethan moved closer, a silent support at her side, but Nia didn't need anyone to save her. This was her moment, her declaration that she would no longer be a passive target of cruelty. And just when the tension seemed unbearable, Haley's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it, unsure of what to say. The laughter, the smirks, the whispers, all of it had evaporated. The hallway felt suspended in time, and the students realized something they hadn't before. Nia had dismantled the entire power structure in those few seconds. Then, as the final bell rang somewhere in the distance, Nia turned, picked up her backpack, and walked away with unshakable poise. Haley watched her go, her confidence shattered, her reign undermined in a way that couldn't easily be repaired. The hallway slowly returned to life, whispers resuming, but the energy had shifted. Students exchanged looks, some nodding subtly to Nia, some whispering in disbelief. The quiet bravery of a single girl had created a ripple that no amount of mockery or fear could erase. And as Nia stepped out into the sunlight spilling through the school doors, she carried with her something more than just victory. She carried the message that courage and integrity could dismantle cruelty, that no one had the power to define her worth but herself. Yet even as she walked, a question lingered in the air, a tension that refused to dissipate. What would Haley do next? How far would she go to reclaim her status? And how would Nia continue to protect herself in a world that often refused to acknowledge fairness? The battle was won, but the war was only beginning. The hallways of Lincoln High felt different after that day. The echoes of laughter, the whispers of judgment, the weight of exclusion, they hadn't vanished entirely, but a subtle shift had occurred. Students who once overlooked Nia now looked at her with a mixture of respect and cautious curiosity. Those who had cheered Haley's antics found themselves questioning the hierarchy they had blindly followed. And though the journey was far from over, the landscape of power in the school had begun to change. Nia, however, didn't walk away with a sense of triumph alone. The aftermath was quiet, reflective, a stark contrast to the explosive tension of the hallway confrontation. She spent days processing the storm she had just weathered. Every step, every whisper, every look of support or disapproval became a lesson in courage and resilience. Sitting with Ethan under the shade of an old oak in the school courtyard, she allowed herself to exhale. "I didn't know if I could do it," Nia admitted, her voice soft but steady. "But I had to. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." Ethan nodded, his expression serious yet supportive. "You changed more than that hallway," he said. "You changed people's perception of what courage looks like. You made them realize that cruelty isn't invincible." "The days that followed weren't perfect," Haley's friends whispered. Some tried to provoke her again, and social media wasn't forgiving. Yet, Nia found something remarkable. The more she maintained her composure, the more the community around her shifted. People began to speak up, support each other, and quietly dismantle the chains of prejudice that had bound them for so long. One by one, classmates who had once laughed now approached Nia, offering apologies or simply a smile of solidarity. Even Haley herself was forced to confront the consequences of her actions. Her confident smirk had faded, replaced by a tension she hadn't anticipated. Teachers, who had once missed subtle acts of harassment, now watched more closely. They realized that unchecked cruelty wasn't harmless. It was destructive, leaving lasting scars on students' emotional and mental well-being. Haley, for the first time, experienced the isolation and self-reflection that Nia had endured silently for months. Nia's parents noticed a change too. Her mother, proud but cautious, reminded her daughter that bravery didn't always come with immediate recognition. "You've shown strength, Nia," she said. "But remember, real courage is also about lifting others up. Not just standing tall yourself," Nia nodded, understanding that her actions had created a ripple effect far beyond that single hallway. The school began to implement small changes, inspired indirectly by Nia's courage. Teachers became more aware of subtle discrimination, anti-bullying campaigns gained traction, and students who had once been passive witnesses learned that silence often empowers hate. Nia realized that courage isn't just a personal act, it's a communal one. By standing up, she had invited others to stand alongside her, to reject prejudice in all its forms. Outside the walls of Lincoln High, Nia also reflected on the broader impact of systemic injustice. Racism isn't just about words or gestures. It's about the cumulative effect of subtle biases, exclusion, and microaggressions. She understood that these acts don't only harm individuals, they weaken communities, break trust, and distort perceptions of what is acceptable. But she also realized that small acts of bravery, when combined with integrity and support from allies, can create seismic change. Her experiences became lessons she carried forward. Nia joined the student council, advocating for policies that promoted inclusion, equity, and awareness. She mentored younger students, teaching them the importance of standing up not only for themselves, but for others who might be vulnerable. Courage, she learned, isn't a one-time moment. It's a habit, a way of being in the world that refuses to normalize injustice. Months passed, and Lincoln High slowly transformed. Students from different backgrounds collaborated more freely, respect replaced casual cruelty, and empathy began to infiltrate spaces that had once been ruled by fear. Haley, having faced the consequences of her actions and the scrutiny of her peers, began to show signs of reflection. It wasn't immediate redemption, but it was a start, a subtle acknowledgement that actions have consequences, and that cruelty is never without cost. Nia herself grew, not just stronger, but wiser. She learned the power of patience, strategy, and resilience. She understood that while confronting hate requires courage, sustaining change requires consistency, empathy, and community. Her victory wasn't about defeating Haley in a moment of confrontation. It was about creating an environment where hate no longer held the power to dominate, intimidate, or define the experiences of others. The moral of her journey became clear. Racism and prejudice don't just harm individuals, they corrode families, weaken communities, and perpetuate cycles of fear and exclusion. But unity, courage, and compassion have the power to heal, to transform, and to empower. By refusing to be silenced, by choosing integrity over fear, Nia showed that one voice, one act of bravery, can dismantle an entire system of oppression. And so, as the sun set over Lincoln High, casting long shadows across the now familiar hallways. Nia walked through the corridors with quiet confidence. She knew the journey wasn't over. Prejudice would resurface, challenges would return. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had allies, a community beginning to awaken, and an unwavering understanding that courage defeats hate and that standing tall can change everything. The hallway where she had once been humiliated became a symbol of transformation, a testament to the resilience of those who refused to be silenced. Nia's story wasn't just about surviving racism. It was about challenging it, reshaping it, and leaving a legacy of empowerment for anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. And in that, there was hope. A hope that echoed beyond the walls of the school. Beyond the whispers and the fear, a hope that reminded everyone that courage, unity, and integrity are stronger than hate, louder than prejudice, and more enduring than injustice ever could be.